It really is fascinating, isn't it? How managing all this tech, the stuff that runs everything, has just gotten so, well, so complex.
It really has.
You're not just looking after servers in a rack anymore. It's this huge, sprawling web of services all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And keeping that running smoothly, that takes some pretty sophisticated tools, which brings us nicely to our topic today.
VMware Area Automation 8.x.
Exactly. We're going deep on area automation. Think of this as like your insider's guide to navigating that complexity we just talked about.
Absolutely. And, to really get a handle on what makes area automation tick, we thought we'd use the VMware 2V0-32.24 exam objectives as a kind of framework.
Great.
So if you're looking at area automation and thinking, wow, that looks like a beast, our goal here is really to cut through some of that noise.
Yes, simplify it a bit.
Get to the core ideas, the essential stuff that gives you a real understanding of its power without getting totally lost in every single technical detail.
Precisely. Because you listening right now, you're probably trying to build up a really solid understanding, maybe for work, maybe just because you're curious.
Sure.
So we've been looking at the info around that exam, the 2V0-32.24, what VMware thinks is critical knowledge, and even some practice questions.
It gives you a good structure, doesn't it?
It really does. A structured way to explore the key functions. So our mission, our promise for this deep dive is a clear breakdown. We're talking architecture, roles, projects, workload placement,
multi-cloud capabilities, integrations,
automation, governance, managing things over time, that lifecycle piece, and even what your users actually see in the service catalog. Ready to unpack it?
Let's do it. And yeah, the logical place to start is right at the beginning.
Makes sense.
Our first focus area using this exam material, it points to the fundamental building block, the area automation appliance itself.
Okay.
The question it poses is, essentially, what's the very first component you absolutely have to deploy when setting up Area Automation 8.x?
And the answer, straight off the bat, is that Area Automation appliance.
Okay, so let's dig into this a bit. Why? Why this piece first? It seems like maybe just another box to check.
Well, it's much more than just another component. Think of it like the central nervous system, or maybe the command center for area automation.
Okay, command center. I like that.
Yeah, because this one appliance, it hosts the core services that make everything else happen. You've got cloud assembly, that's where you define your infrastructure as code, right?
Right, the blueprints.
Then there's service broker, which is the storefront, the self-service portal for users, and code stream, which handles your CI/CD pipelines, your automation workflows.
So all the key engines are in there?
Exactly. Without that area automation appliance deployed and running, none of those other crucial parts can function. It's the absolute foundation.
Got it.
Architecturally, putting these core services together simplifies that initial setup, though obviously in production you'd want redundancy for resilience. Right. Makes sense. So no appliance, no command center, no automation. Okay.
Yeah.
So that covers the initial setup piece. Now, what about who does what in this system?
Good question.
The next question zooms in on a specific role, the one responsible for creating and publishing those blueprints, or cloud templates, as they're now called.
And that role is the cloud developer.
Cloud developer, okay.
What's interesting here, I think, is the level of specialization it points to. It's not just any admin clicking buttons.
Yes.
No, the cloud developer is the specific persona who's empowered to design the templates, test them, and then actually make them available for others to consume. That's quite a shift from, traditional infra management.
Right, because it's moving much more towards that infrastructure as code model, which I guess needs a slightly different skill set than just racking servers and plugging things in. You're defining things in code.
Precisely. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, this whole idea of role-based access control, RBAC, making sure the right people have the right permissions.
Yeah.
Well, it's just vital for keeping things secure and orderly.
It is absolutely essential in complex environments.
Yeah. By clearly defining roles like this cloud developer, you get a controlled, auditable workflow for how infrastructure gets defined and deployed. It cuts down on errors, prevents accidental deployments.
It's better governance overall.
Definitely. For someone used to manual config, the big mindset shift is probably embracing that declarative code approach and working more closely with dev teams.
Okay, so we have the foundation, the appliance, and the people who define the infrastructure, the cloud developers. How do we start organizing all these digital building blocks?
Right.
Question 3 looks at the purpose of projects within area automation. What's a project actually do?
So think of a project as a logical container. It basically bundles together a specific group of users,
Okay.
the cloud templates they're allowed to use, And the cloud zones, those are the underlying infrastructure pools like vSphere clusters or AWS regions where those templates can actually be deployed.
Right, so it ties users, templates, and destinations together.
Exactly. And what's really useful is how projects help enforce that role-based access we just talked about. You assign users or groups to a project, and then you control precisely which blueprints and cloud resources they can touch, but only within that project's boundaries.
Ah, okay.
And beyond just separation, projects are also super helpful for things like cost allocation or setting compliance boundaries if you've got, say, multiple departments using the same area setup.
Got it. So if I have like a finance team and an engineering team, I could create separate projects for each.
You could.
And finance only sees finance templates and deploys to finance-approved zones, and engineering sees theirs. And maybe I can track their costs separately too.
Exactly right. It stops teams stepping on each other's toes, accidentally or otherwise, and it gives you that mechanism for chargeback or showback, making sure usage aligns with budgets. It's about creating those administrative walls for better management, especially as you scale up.
That sounds incredibly useful, especially in bigger companies. Okay, so shifting gears a bit, where do these workloads actually end up running?
Good point.
Question 4 gets into placement policies. These are within cloud zones, and they apparently decide where VMs get deployed. Talks about spread versus bin pack. Can you unpack those?
Yeah, this touches on optimizing how you use your underlying resources. So within a cloud zone, which is that defined pool of infrastructure capacity, remember?
Yep.
A placement policy tells area automation how to distribute the VMs you're spinning up. A spread policy tries to put each VM on a different physical host as much as possible.
Okay, spreading them out.
Right. The main advantage there is high availability. If one physical server hiccups, it affects fewer of your VMs because they're distributed.
So building resilience, basically. Minimizing the blast radius if a host fails.
Precisely. On the flip side, a bin pack policy does the opposite. It tries to cram as many VMs as possible onto the fewest number of physical hosts.
Okay, packing them in tightly.
Yep. And the benefit there can be efficiency. You're maximizing the density on your active servers, which might reduce costs like power, cooling, maybe even licensing, depending on the model.
Right.
Choosing between spread and bin pack or other policies really depends on what the application needs. Maybe latency-sensitive apps benefit from spread to avoid noisy neighbors, while less critical, cost-focused workloads might be fine with bin pack to max out resource usage.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just deploy. It's deploy smartly based on priorities. Okay, now, a huge part of area automation is managing stuff across different clouds, right? Multi-clouds.
Absolutely key these days.
Question 5 touches on this. It asks what's needed in a cloud template so that a user could choose to deploy it to, say, AWS or Azure.
Ah, yes. The magic here is using what are called cloud-agnostic resources in your template.
Cloud agnostic. Okay.
To get that flexibility, deploy the same template in different clouds, you need these abstracted resource types.
Yeah.
Like you might define a cloud machine resource in your template code.
Okay.
ARIA Automation knows this means a virtual machine with certain specs, CPU, memory, disk, but it deliberately avoids hard-coding it to be an AWS EC2 instance or an Azure VM. It's abstract.
So the template says I need a VM with 2 cores and 8 gigs of RAM, but not I need a T3.medium instance.
Exactly. That's the core idea. Then when someone goes to deploy it, they can pick the target AWS, Azure, GCP, vSphere, whatever is configured.
And Area figures it out.
Or it handles the translation behind the scenes. It uses things like image mappings. This generic Linux image means this AMI in AWS and this image in Azure. And flavor mappings. This generic medium size means this instance type here and that VM size there.
Wow, okay.
This cloud-agnostic approach is just fundamental for avoiding vendor lock-in. It lets you use the best services from different clouds, gives you flexibility, maybe even better negotiation power.
That's a massive advantage in the real world. So how does area automation actually make those connections to AWS or Azure? Question 6 asks about the integration needed for that.
The key piece here is the cloud account.
Cloud account?
Think of a cloud account within ARIA as basically a secure, authenticated connection to your subscription or account in that public cloud provider.
Right.
You configure it with the necessary credentials, API keys, endpoint details, whatever ARIA needs to talk to and manage resources within your AWS account or your Azure subscription or Google Cloud project.
So it's like giving Arya the keys to the kingdom, but hopefully in a very secure, controlled way.
Exactly. Without those cloud accounts set up correctly, ARIA just can't reach out and provision those cloud-agnostic resources we were just talking about. And yeah, managing those credentials securely using least privilege That's obviously super important.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're deploying, we're connecting to clouds. But Area does more than just basic infrastructure, right? There's automation. Question 7 points to Area Automation Orchestrator for custom workflows. What kind of things can Orchestrator actually do?
Orchestrator. This is where you really extend Area's power beyond just that initial VM provisioning.
Okay.
It gives you a platform visual drag and drop or scripting like JavaScript to build custom automation routines.
Like what, though? Give me some examples.
Oh, loads of things. You could build a workflow for an approval process. Someone requests a big server. It automatically routes to their manager for an OK before deploying.
Right, workflow automation.
Or once a VM is deployed, workflow could automatically trigger your configuration management tool like Ansible or Chef to finish setting it up.
Integrating with other tools.
Yep. It can handle those day 2 actions we'll talk about later, manage notifications, integrate with ticketing systems, talk to pretty much anything with a REST API or SSH.
So it really bridges the gap between infrastructure deployment and all the surrounding IT processes.
Exactly. You can automate entire processes, like maybe complex application deployments, or even parts of incident response. It's about streamlining all those manual steps that eat up time and invite errors. That's where the real transformation can happen.
Okay, that sounds powerful. So we're deploying, connecting, automating, but how do we stop things getting out of hand? Resource usage, costs.
Yeah, governance. Crucial.
Question 8 brings up resource quota policies. What do these let us do?
Resource quota policies are a really important governance lever in Aria. They let you set and enforce limits.
Limits on what?
On resource consumption. Things like total CPU, memory, or storage that a user or a project is allowed to consume, or even just the total number of VMs they can deploy.
Okay.
This is absolutely critical for managing costs, right? And for making sure one team or user doesn't accidentally hog all the resources. It ensures fair usage.
So basically setting guardrails, preventing runaways.
Precisely. You can stop that shadow IT where resources get spun up without approval and costs spiral. You define these quotas, maybe at the project level, and it helps maintain overall capacity, stick to budgets, and just generally prevent resource starvation that could impact other important apps.
That sounds vital for any kind of shared environment. Okay, what about after something is deployed, managing it ongoing?
Right, the life cycle.
Question 9 asks about day 2 actions. It gives resizing a VM CPU as an example. Why are these day 2 actions important in the Aria context?
Well, it highlights that Aria isn't just about that initial day 1 provisioning. It's designed to manage the entire life cycle of a resource.
Okay.
Day 2 actions cover everything you might need to do after something is deployed. Resizing CPU or RAM, adding disks, changing network settings, maybe running a script, taking a snapshot, powering it off, powering it on, and eventually decommissioning it.
All through Aria.
Ideally, yes. Performing these actions through Aria's interface, or maybe triggering an orchestrator workflow to do them, provides a consistent, audited, and often automated way to manage things. Instead of logging into vCenter here, the AWS console there, the Azure portal somewhere else.
You manage it centrally. It's a shift from just building stuff to actually managing the whole life cycle.
That's exactly the paradigm shift, from build to lifecycle management. Very important concept.
Okay, final question area. This sounds like a common practical problem. Question 10. A user goes to the service broker catalog looking for a template to deploy, but they can't find it. What's the most likely reason?
Yes, the invisible template problem.
Happens a lot.
It can, especially when you're starting out. The most probable cause here is that the cloud template, even if it exists and is saved correctly back in Cloud Assembly, it hasn't been properly versioned and then released to the service broker.
Versioned and released.
Yes. Think of it like stages. You design the template, maybe test it. That's like a draft. But just saving it doesn't make it available for end users to request via the self-service portal.
Okay.
You need to explicitly create a version, give it a version number like 1.0, and then crucially release that version to the service broker catalog, potentially making it available only to certain projects. Until you do that release step, it stays hidden. It won't show up for users. Understanding that template lifecycle create, version, release is key to making sure people can actually deploy the things you've built for them.
So the blueprint might be finished in the design office, but it hasn't actually been published for the construction crew to see and use yet. That final release makes it visible.
That's a great analogy, yes. That release step pushes it into the service broker catalog, which is that user-facing portal designed to empower users and cut down on IT tickets for simple requests.
Got it. That's a really useful, practical tip.
Definitely something to remember.
This deep dive has given us a fantastic foundation, but it really does feel like just scratching the surface of what modern infrastructure automation can do.
It's just the beginning, really. There's a lot
Mhm.
more potential there.